Well, we're live here once again. Welcome to Searching for Sparks. And I'm Tim Motzer, and today I'm really excited, as always, but really excited today to have Kenny Grohowski, the great drummer, one of my favorite drummers in this planet at the moment. And what's really interesting is I've checked his music out for quite a while, going back to I think the first time I saw him play might have been with the Secret Chiefs, also with Brand X recently, and John Zorn Simulacrum, if I said that word right. And it's close enough, right? And we'll find out a whole bunch of exciting news and what's happening. And the excitement around these parts, for me anyway, is that we're working together in a new band called P.A.K.T, P-A-K-T, which features the legendary Percy Jones on bass and Alex Skolnick on guitar. So we'll be talking about all this and other collaborations we've had, and Kenny's whole career, a little bit diving into what makes this man tick, so to speak. So without further ado, bringing on Kenny. Hello, are we working?
Good afternoon. Good to see you, Tim.
Great to see you. It's been, wow, I guess we haven't seen each other since August of 2020.
Yes, you're right. It's been the summer. It's been almost a year.
Wow. And that's kind of an interesting place to start because, you know, it's like we've been in this nebulous world, so to speak. And we did get to play last August 2020, which was just an amazing gig that I would love to talk to you more about. But what have you been up to during this whole time, you know?
Well, I mean, between that gig and now it's mostly been mostly writing. You know, a lot of writing. I haven't really left the city. I actually left Manhattan, or just, you know, the tri-state area, for the first time last week to do a session with a dear friend, Alex Cohen, another really fantastic drummer. I mean, some people probably are aware of his book that's out now. It's amazing. It's an incredible book. So we were working on I mean, I don't know what I can disclose yet, but it's a project that's this kind of a one-man prog black metal, death metal kind of thing. But it's like, it's weird because there's a lot of prog metal that exists, and really it sounds more like neoclassical. You know, it's really more coming out of Yngwie than it is maybe coming out of the Canterbury scene. Whereas this guy's stuff, it's weird. It's really like a mix of like the Canterbury thing, but with real death metal and some real black metal. It's very interesting stuff. So, you know, and challenging. Like I tried my best to do the charts justice. You know, I had to Grohowski the shit a little bit, you know, just because it's like, you know, there's limits to what I can do, but still he was really happy with the results. It seems like he's very happy. So, you know, hopefully once that's kind of coming together, that'll be promoted and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, Alex is on most of it, and it's pretty badass, but yeah, that's the only time I've left the city, was just for this. The rest of the time I've been in Brooklyn and writing. I started a writing project that I kind of handled, the COVID-19 skeleton project. So there's a chunk of that material is just kind of like probably going to end up on like an etude book that I'm planning on doing, like hopefully, you know, in the next year or so, that I can actually focus on it and get the charts and the written material kind of together. And I've already started doing that after a few other writing projects I had over the year, like actual literary writing projects. Like I did something for Zorn's Arcana series, which was pretty intense. Yeah, I was really shocked that he asked me to do that, because it's, you know, usually you're asking luminaries, people who've actually changed things. Like, you know, I'm just somebody who plays well in his sphere, but it was really sweet of him to include me on that. So after that, and sort of with Joey and both Alex Cohen's, you know, recommendations, I started writing, like words, actual thoughts and words, and not just music, but, you know, a lot of music. This COVID-19 skeleton project it's a lot of music. Like, again, like I said, it's just kind of going to probably be in an etude book that I'm planning on releasing at some point, probably self-released. But, some of the music is going to end up with Imperial. Some of it is ending up on a project I'm working on with Percy right now, a sort of like more jazz kind of trio kind of thing. That's some stuff that we're collaborating on right now. So, and it's nice because I'm basically sending him, like kind of like head tunes, you know what I mean? Definitely more like in a jazz thing where like, here's like an ABC or AABA kind of thing. And then he's taking it and then just completely rearranging things and changing parts and adding other melodies and sections. And it's
That's
very cool. It's very inspiring, I mean, so some of the stuff is ending up on that. And then some of the songs are going to end up in other bands, which is kind of cool. So, it was nice to be productive in a way that didn't involve physically playing drums or actively like hardcore shedding, prepping in that regard. Not that I didn't practice. I mean, I definitely spent a lot of time on the pad and trying to keep in shape, but just not actively touring and not actively just being creative on an instrument, but going back to like, here's a guitar or here's a keyboard or here's some sheet music or here's just, Logic Pro, and get into MIDI again and get into programming and doing that kind of thing. And it's been nice. It's been kind of it's been a reprieve amongst all the insanity,
Oh yeah.
like not to get super topical because, again, like no matter who you are and what you believe or think is true or not, it's an insane time. It's a really crazy time, and it's been nice to kind of actually been able to just kind of stop and try to find a center and do some homework and do some writing,
Yeah. That sounds great, man. I mean, I think a lot of people, because of this break, we've all had the time to either get out of phase and go deep down and search our souls or whatever. But it's been, against the negative aspects of it. It's actually, there's been a lot of really positive things that have occurred during this time with everybody. And you brought up a number of names there, including your band Imperial, Imperial Triumphant, right?
Correct. Yes.
And John Zorn. And one of the things I wanted to find out is about both of those artists is, when did you start working with Zorn? How did that come about? And then the same question about Imperial Triumphant.
I mean, funny enough, those bands kind of do have a little bit of an overlap.
Yeah.
It would have started really with Abraxas, which is from the Book of Angels 2.
Yeah.
Of the Masada series. So that was volume 19. It was the 19th album of the Book 2 series. And initially that band was going to be the same personnel, but with Hamid Drake on drums, which is, that would have, there's a part of me that in my, as a fan, it would be cool to hear that music with his interpretations, but here we are, but
great.
But it ended up becoming a thing where Chenier Blumenkrantz and I were both playing the same music festival in December of 2011. It was a Sephardic music festival, and I was playing there with an old friend of mine from New School named Nuriel Amaya, and then he was playing there with Pharaoh's Daughter. So it was very future overlap things were happening in this gig, and
awesome.
Our band happened to be finishing a sound check, and his band was coming in, and the only time Chenier and I had ever interacted with each other before that was back in, I want to say 2003 or 2002. We did an improvised trio with him and El Maos in his apartment out in Alphabet City. Jonathan Powell was an old friend of his from the Florida days, because we're all Florida people.
All right.
All South Florida. So they knew each other. And Jonathan passed him my info, say, hey, call this guy. He's a jazz guy, but he's into metal. He lives in the Village. Maybe he'd be free to do it, And at the time, I wasn't necessarily into metal. I just got into Meshuggah and like bands like Neck and Spooge and Dillinger and Candiria. So I wasn't a metalhead yet. I just got exposed to this stuff and was like, this is amazing music, and I want to get into this. So I was still, green. But, that was my first time meeting Eyal Maos, who's, one of the Abraxas guitarists, and Chenier. And it was Chenier playing his 5-string upright, and Eyal just playing like, it was like, not to sound super fucked up, but it was like, basically he's playing like really orthodox, like Jewish music, like the kind of stuff that you normally play in weddings. Like,
Right.
so he's playing these songs, and instead of like, playing Freilox and Oompa and the being stylistic, I just have to grind and play blast beats and D beats the whole time. And then Shanier's just sawing away and doing all this prepared bass and, Ponticello stuff. And, my exposure, or at least diving into that kind of playing, like the downtown thing or the free thing or any of this music, was all very, very, very new for me. So it was, it was kind of like I was having a blast, but I was like, this is nuts. and the three of us never saw each other again until about 2012, because then in 2011 we have this gig. We're passing by each other, like we're gonna go grab some food with the band that I'm in, and he's coming in, and we just look at each other. It's like, I know you. and it made sense, because he's always kind of looked the same in some ways. Like the beard length has been different, the hair length's been different, but he has like a very, like he has a certain look that's just Chenier. Whereas when he met me in 2002 or 3, I had short curly hair. It probably was still bleached, or it might have been dyed a certain color. I had several piercings in my face. Now he's seeing me like, a decade later, I have a beard and, long hair, no piercings. Or I think I still had the lip ring still. That was the last piece to go.
Yeah.
But, so it was like, we weren't sure, but we figured it out. And then, he kind of we were doing this gig together, and he really liked the gig. And he's like, you know what? I think I want to ask this guy to do this Masada project. And, of course, Zorn had no idea who I was. I've played at the Stone a couple of times with Lonnie Plaxico and people like that, but which was actually the first time I ever heard Chess Smith play.
Wow.
It was 2008. And it was Lonnie Plaxico was playing. It was like Steve Coleman was presenting he had a residency at the Stone at that week. He gave Lonnie a set, and so we played with his, with the Lonnie Plaxico group, his old quintet. And then the next set was Jonathan Finlayson Trio, and it was with Chess Smith on drums. And it was the first time I ever heard and seen him play, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? I'm such
when you met him for the first time as well?
I didn't stay till the end of the show, because I actually had to leave and meet someone at the time. So I didn't stay the whole time. And back then I also lived way uptown, and Lonnie usually made me bring gear, like, because he didn't trust backline. So I mean, the old Zinc Bar days, I used to have to bring a fucking drum set.
Wow.
He would not want me to use the Zinc Bar drum set. I'm like, it's good enough for Tane.
Yeah.
It's good. Like, why? Like, what's wrong with it? But it was. I think he was also, that was part of his, like, you're young, you're new here, you're gonna pay dues. I know you can't afford a cab, so I know you're gonna drag your drums to this gig. Like, so it was training. It was really good training. Like, he always was very mentoring in that way. But anyway, getting back to the 2008 thing.
It's all fascinating. Yeah, go ahead.
I never think about this stuff until somebody asks a question, and it's like, oh, fuck, that's right, I've lived.
It's amazing to hear this, really. This is all part of what, this show's about. It's really, we're just improvising and going through like experiences and things that I think a lot of people will dig hearing about, and
awesome,
like the journey of the musician, and everybody has their own distinct journey,
Yep. I mean, those are like the days where it's like, yeah, I mean, this is pre-social media, this is even like a little bit, when I was first playing with Lonnie and doing those gigs at Zinc Bar and dragging drums, we're talking early 2000s. It was still on Houston.
Wow.
I had one of those rock and roller carts and at the time I had a decent drum set, but the kit that I was using was the kit that we got for the church that I was living in. So it was this kind of Mapex, like an M series or something like that. I would be putting it on the rock and roller and going down 3rd Ave and then cutting across Houston with this drum set to load into Zinc Bar like an a-hole, an a-hole. And then doing 3 sets and then dragging that fucker back.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was like, well, it's like, it's not that far from where the church was. It was on 3rd Ave and 7th, right next to Cooper Union. So it was a quick walk. It wasn't that brutal, but it's that when you're young and you're paying dues and doing the thing. But
we've all done it in our own ways. But yeah,
exactly,
paying dues for sure.
But yeah, so that was and by that time too, like I did get to see shows at Tonic right before it closed. Like I did get to experience that. But again, these were all all these little mini experiences in the village in the early 2000s were kind of like a lot of precursor to then what would happen in 2012 with the whole Abraxas thing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, just to get back to that, but, you know, Chenier told Zorn, like, I want to use this guy. Of course, Zorn has no idea who I am. So Chenier would go to different gigs I was doing in town, and he would call Zorn, and he would pretend that he was like having like a oh, hey, how's it going? Like, he would like do this, but really he's actually just they're not having a conversation. He's not saying anything. He's just letting Zorn hear the gig so that he could get a sense of how I played. And then Zorn was like, oh, okay, well, you know, he sounds good. Let's give him a shot. You know, because he was putting a lot of faith and trust in Chenier at that point. Like, they were doing a lot of things together. So he was just like, I trust you. Let's go with this. And then that's how that relationship started with Abraxas, and then which we led to the Psychomagia record. And that was how I got connected to Secret Chiefs, because
Wow.
we did a show together in a Jazz and Marciac. It was a left trio, Secret Chiefs, and Abraxas. So that was my first time. You know, I had known Secret Chiefs 3. I wasn't the hugest Mr. Bungle fan. Like, Mr. Bungle was a band that my friend in high school, Edwinito, tried to get me into. And when I first heard it, I was like, this is not music. This is bullshit. Fuck this. Like, if only I knew, like, years later what I'd be doing. Because I felt the same way when I heard Naked City.
Yeah.
To be honest, like Naked City and Painkiller, that stuff was just like, I wasn't a metalhead. I didn't really, I mean, Ornette, I checked out some Ornette, you know, checked out era, like the 60s early era, like avant-garde jazz, but the free stuff, or like the avant-garde rock and the avant-garde prog, and I never went deep, and I didn't have a grounding for it. Especially Miami, there's very few people. Now it's probably different, but when I was a kid, like, the community I was in was predominantly, you know, a Latino community, so it was mostly Afro-Cuban, Afro-Puerto Rican, Afro-Caribbean musics,
Of course.
and then, you know, like gig music, so top 40.
Yeah.
You know, it's Florida, so you got to be able to play blues, and you got to be able to play rock. And my parents were musicians, so there was a lot of influences, but not the free thing, not the avant-garde thing. You know, like, and I just was like, it took a long time. It took a couple of years before I was like, man, this is really good and impressive. But you know, but yeah, so I met Secret Chiefs for the first time on this gig in Jazz and Marciac, and you know, I was like super blown away, because again, here's Ches Smith. And I didn't realize, like, you know, in my head, it was like kind of like I knew he played in the band, but I didn't realize, like, oh yeah, that's right, he plays with Zorn. He's going to be on this gig. So it was amazing. We got to like hang out, and it was our first time really meeting, and it was like a super awesome vibe, and had a lot of fun. It was like my first experience doing a Zorn gig on that kind of level, where it wasn't just playing the Stone. It was like, no, we're playing a show with Zorn and really interacting and meeting with them. And it was really inspiring, and just like, you know, very much like a communal kind of vibe. Like, I mean, we were even hanging out with the band for the other artist who was sharing the bill. Like it was very communal. And
Cool.
there were some moments, there were not moments, sorry. There were some tours that were coming up that Ches knew he wasn't going to be able to commit to, because he had his own project at the time. Ceramic Dog was getting really busy, and all the other stuff that he was doing in those kind of early teen years. So they were kind of actively, and I didn't know at the time, but they were actively looking for subs for Secret Chiefs. And after the gig, they figured, well, you know, this guy's like, you know, he can handle the Zorn thing, but he clearly does other stuff. And he's, you know, he's wearing a metal shirt. So, you know, and just talking to them, saying like, oh, I know who you guys are. This is super cool to meet you guys. Like, I was like because you know, I mean, I know can be very intense, but like, I still get starstruck, you know, I still get very like, I don't maybe show it, but it's inside. I'm like, holy fuck, it's fucking Trace Spruance. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm having dinner with John Zorn. Like how many people would want to be in this position right now?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So it was very heavy, and at that time too, I was still trying to fight my way out of the common New York musician beatdown, where you just kind of get into your own headspace and just the constant I suck, I don't belong here, I shouldn't be here. Like, you know, everyone falls prey to it at some point, and they express it differently. And, you know, so I was still getting out of that mentality and that mindset. And kind of being around those folks kind of helped me to do it in a way, because they were, you know, it was always a very encouraging environment. I mean, I remember some of those early Secret Chiefs gigs where, I mean, we're talking like playing some of the Ashrakian stuff, and the songs are just like, if you could visually represent it of how the song was ending, it's like the very end of the train wreck, where it's just the final fucking shrapnel is finally stops moving. That's how these songs were ending. It was brutal, and the fans were super not into it, you know, and I was not into it because I'm like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I know this sucks. I just did it. I was there. I was the first witness to know how bad this sucks. So it was, but Trey never ever like it. He didn't do the typical band leader thing where it was a beatdown. It was always encouragement. It's always like, you have this. You're just getting in your own way. You have to breathe this stuff. You need to check out some other things. And that's sort of what then, you know, because of that, it actually led to me exploring, like, kind of getting out of the pro musician, session guy, fusoid thing into these other worlds, which then led to like getting exposed to like music from Yemen and music from like the Ganawan and then all this other influences that Trey and Chenier and these people have that just I had no idea about they even existed, you know, like, so it was, you know, it was like this really incredible growth period, you know, and even like playing surf rock, I sucked at playing surf rock. I couldn't, and I knew it sucked. I would play and it's like, man, this sounds like slick fusion drummer shit. This doesn't have the right swing. This isn't like Dick Dale. It's not swinging, you know, and I would just like watch Kenny Wollesen and just like, I mean, like these guys don't know because Zorn doesn't allow you to like videotape gigs most of the time. I got bootlegs of Kenny Wollesen and Chess Smith playing surf rock and doing all this shit. Just Joey Barron playing brushes. And that's what I look at. I have them saved in folders and files and backed up on drives. And, you know, because, you know, because this was like, oh, there's this whole arena of playing that because of necessity, I've never engaged in. Yeah. I've always kind of been the person that's like, whatever music or opportunities come my way, I'm going to accept them. And I'm going to dive in and see where that goes and see how far that this can be taken in what directions and if and all directions, if possible, you know. So that's where, like, you know, maybe working on things like, you know, playing some surf rock or anything else was just never, I didn't do a surf rock gig up until Secret Chiefs. So it was like,
it just wasn't part of your vocabulary at the time, but it just seems that you were just constantly learning. It's just always, right? Just always getting into situations where you had to learn new stuff.
Definitely. And that's kind of what I've always wanted. Like, you know, I mean, I was even telling Alex this last week or week and a half ago. And then when we did the session, it's like, you know, I realized like I spent all this time in the pandemic just being at home, just catching up on video games I've been wanting to play for years and writing all this music and writing these essays and putting like some thoughts and some philosophies and concepts down on, you know, on at least on some notation or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, it hit me. It's like, I haven't taken a lesson in like almost 2 decades. And that seems really fucking stupid. Like there's all these drummers that are amazing that I can email them and say like, how much would it cost to take a 3-hour, 2-hour lesson? You know, it's like, and, you know, I was teaching some lessons over the summer or over the year, which has been really fun and rewarding, but I kind of realized like, I think it's time. I mean, it's probably been time, to be honest. So, you know, like there's like this guy in Australia who's very, very famous, this guy, Pete Drummond. So I'm probably, you know, I mean, I know Alex already let him know, but, you know, I'm probably going to take some lessons with him and a few other guys here in the city, just even if it's 1 or 2 lessons, just to like, get a concept where it's like, I'm going to spend months or years shedding this shit and checking back with you. And because, you know, I mean, these are guys who are, you know, they're pros and they're at a much higher level. So their time is only going to be so much. So I got to make sure I can get stuff that also a pro, I can just sit and dig in and just, I know what I got to do. And just let me check in every once in a while, make sure things are cool. So it's like, you know, just getting back to like in a state of, not just getting into musical concepts or philosophical or theoretical concepts, but like, no, like, let me sit with a fucking drummer who kicks my ass on something and be like, help me get this in shape. Even if I'm never going to do that thing, like Alex's stuff, like Alex's book, most of what's in there is going to be beyond what I'm ever going to really aim for doing. But just the fact that you're aiming for it and see how far you can go and how that can be, I mean, just what it does to your brain.
The awareness, really. Right?
Yeah. And the creating of pathology and creating of new connections in the mind, like literally connecting dots. It's going to, because even like I've realized, and I was telling him at that session during this whole, like, man, I want to take lessons. It's like realizing that there's certain things that Zorn wants me to do in a band like Simulacrum, where it's like, man, if I really had that 4-way left side shit going on, because he already has me setting up extra stuff on the left side already. That's part of the Simulacrum setup. Is there's 2 floor toms on each side. There's it's kind of like a weirdly new breedish kind of setup with Simulacrum, which I don't do normally with other bands. But getting into the other concepts that I don't really engage in can only help me orchestrate that stuff in a much more balanced way, essentially. So it's not so right side dominant, which is, or lead side dominant, which happens with a lot of drummers. It's whatever your right hand's doing, everything goes that way, instead of like being more totality, being more like, like the Da Vinci diagram. You know what I mean? Like
symmetrical in a way.
Exactly. Thank you. That's the word. It's being more actually holistic and symmetrical with what we're doing. And it's something I've always wanted, but it's sort of like, well, my left side's good at this, so I'm going to focus on that. My right side's good at this, I'm going to focus on that. And not that that isn't a good thing either, but what ends up happening, it's like, it sort of becomes more trapezoidal.
Yeah. It must be interesting, like after all these years and all these different projects you've done and all this different learning, in a way that this past year happened, so you could just go and take that big breath and kind of maybe reflect on everything that's gone down. And by re-entering, like studying with someone, it's so great in a way, I think, having all that new experience and all that old experience piling up and be able to talk to someone about it and see where else you can go, but also understanding stuff that 20 years ago you wouldn't have, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And guys like that are on like their level with what they do. It's like, it's oftentimes it's something that, because it's not part of the worlds that I tend to exist in, it's not really thought about that much, but it can only be a boon. And that was sort of even like my realizations with Zorn, like later on. I know I got super tangential. I didn't explain the Imperial or any of that stuff, how that connects. But, with Zorn, it's like ever since those initial Abraxas sessions and then the Simulacrum sessions that were sort of birthed out of that, and which I don't think I even explained how Simulacrum came to be, but it's all around the same time period. It's all within like the 2012, 2014, basically when those albums were being released. That's when, working with Zorn and getting closer to him. And then, now that we're getting closer, he's like, hey, you need to catch up with the rest of my crew. Here's a stack of fucking CDs here's your homework. Yeah. Here's what a lot of your colleagues, and here's what a lot of your priors have done. Here's a catalog of stuff. Here's different concepts for scoring and writing and composing. And by the way, I have this idea for a project with you and which would be, the Simulacrum with Hollenberg. And I mean, it's really something I think he approached Hollenberg on, which something he wanted to do, which was like the sort of like a rebirth of like the Tony William emergency trio.
Yeah.
Like sort of, you know what I mean? Like that kind of like organ, guitar, drums trio, no bass, just, and that was sort of the early concept for Simulacrum. And it's obviously grown a lot since.
Yeah.
But getting to know him and getting closer to him in this process, like realizing like, wait, no, he doesn't want random ass shit. He wants purposeful stuff.
Yeah.
And it was my ignorance that was like saying like, oh, well, it's free. So it's, there's a song or there's a score and structure, but you just do what you do, or it's got to sound like this. And he's like, no, you don't do that. Like, do you in this concept, in this context, but I want you. If I wanted what you just did, there's 10 other guys I can call who do that better than you.
Yep.
And it's not an insult. He's right. Like, yeah, I mean, it's you could call like, God rest his soul, you can call Milford to give you like that, or you can do this weird fusion metal Latino thing that you got going on, which is what I asked you for. So give me that. But now we're doing events, so pay attention. So it was realizing like, no, he really is looking for all different kinds of expressions, you know, and getting closer to a guy like Tyshawn Sorey and getting to really watch him up close and talk with him and just hang with him, just to realize like, man, the level, even Chess, like people think that he's just being a like random explosive. It's like, it's the fact that the takeaway is that shows you the level of excellence that it can't possibly be thought out or felt or understood. Like, oh, I can do this phrase and in 5.5 beats, I'm going to be at the top of the form, and just it's going to sound like randomness, and then all of a sudden, boom, the whole band's together. It's like, no, these guys are thinking on a multi-dimensional level. They're thinking real chess. They're not thinking 2D like a lot of music and musicians tend to be. It tends to be like get here to there, and it's like, well, there's an infinite ways of doing that, and perhaps no ways of doing that. Really.
Yeah.
So it's all part of this like communal sort of educational thing, and it's like it's what I was looking for in moving to a place like New York, was to be surrounded by people where you're just, you know, whether you're getting your ass kicked or you're just in a hang, and it's just this nurturing mentoring, or it's like a philosophical thing, or it's just a performative thing where, you know, it's always this evolution. It's a growth. Like that's like, I mean, it gives you energy, you know, it allows a person to stay inspired, which is one of the hardest things to do in this life, is stay inspired.
That's what this show's about too. That's why it's called Searching for Sparks, you know, because I'm always searching for sparks. You know, I have been my whole life. And it's like, what's the thing going to be that gets me psyched for the next project, or makes me get up and run down to the studio to record a new idea or whatever. And that's the thing that keeps us all going, you know, and you know, like this collaboration with Markus that came up suddenly in 2019, which is called Shapeshifters. I was actually at, let's see, I'm trying to think if I played the gig. Oh, I opened for Stickmen in Philadelphia, solo soundscape avant-garde thing that I do. And Leo said, Tim, doing this thing with Kenny and Markus, can you do that? And I'm like, absolutely. let's dive into that, right?
Man, yeah.
You know, it's like, these are the kinds of things you have to do as a musician. Talk about sparks and getting your ass kicked, you know. But at the same time, you know, I'd played with Markus many times, so I had, you know, we have like a chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, that was very apparent.
But for this gig, I was like, well, maybe I should bring my bass. You know,
man, it was perfect what we did. It was so fun. It was so fun. And
we jumped off the cliff. And, you know, the result is the album, which still blows me out. Like, I've listened to it a few times. And when I was painting the paintings for the cover, I painted to that. And
I remember,
I was just like, wow, man, you know?
Yeah.
So that's free improv. That's deep listening.
Yeah.
But what was it like from your chair with what was happening?
I mean, in a weird way, it was just a lot of fun, you know, because it's, you know, by that point, by 2019, I've gotten to a place where living in that world is comforting now. You know, where it's just like, oh, we're just being human beings. We're having a conversation, and not just in getting past the rhetoric of what that means. Like when musicians say it colloquially, and getting to the place where like, oh shit, no, we're literally fucking talking. Wow. And you know, and I had been a fan of Markus's for some time. Like, I mean, not like, oh my God, this is like not like super uber nerdy as I have definitely got with like Chess and guys like that, but it was still like, man, this guy's an amazing musician. How cool would it fucking be to play with this guy? Something like there's like guys that you want to play with in your life, even if it's just once. And most of the time you go like, yeah, that's not going to happen, which is, you know, obviously bad advice. Don't say that shit out loud. Just speak it to existence. Like, I don't give a fuck what you believe. It doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. Just speak it into existence.
Manifest.
Yeah, just manifest that shit. Just make it happen.
Yeah.
Just keep saying it until it happens and do it.
Or,
But
or thinking it until it happens.
exactly, just push out the negative shit. It literally, there's no motion in negativity. I mean, well, not in science. This isn't science. We're talking about some other shit. We're talking about the life thing, like emotional negativity, not actual charged particles. Anyway, so getting to do this stuff with Markus, I was like, as soon as like Leo sent the email, I was like, yeah, of course. Like it would be amazing to play with him, especially in a context like where we're just improvising. Cause like to me, he's always been one of those guys where it's like, no matter where he takes things, the ideas are so absolutely clear. And it allows a person to really go, I see this shape that's taking place, and you're seeing how it's playing out over time. It's like, well, let's start fucking with this. Let's start pulling and stretching things. And it's like, oh, and then there's this wonderful tapestry of sound that was happening. And, it was just, and, I mean, I've known about you for years, but we've never played together. So it was just like, and of course I've never played with him. So I'm just like, I'm just going to play.
Man.
I'm going to bring a couple of things. I'm not going to be like super extravagant. Like I think P.A.K.T was probably more accoutrement and more doodads and more things. And that was sort of like my little wink to Percy in a sense. But for our gig, I was like, because I prefer playing more minimalist kits. And maybe that's just the jazz bow, old school drum thing with rock thing. But I prefer just like, I never feel like you really get all the sounds out of any one aspect of the kit. So why the hell am I adding a bunch of things? I didn't even make this one thing really sound the way it should.
Yeah.
So which is not maybe the best perspective, but it's where I'm comfortable. So, and in that context, it really worked because I mean, there's just moments where it's just you two guys are like, there's no need for cymbals. There's no need for bells and chimes and sizzles and things. It's like, you guys it's all happening. It's all celestial. And it's like, man, it was just cool. Yeah. It was just fucking cool. And I was so like, I went home really happy.
Yeah, me too. And I know Markus too. We were all just thrilled that night and buzzing. It was just, it's what we live for kind of, it's like that vibe. And it's also, I agree with you. It was a fun gig in the sense that of course there's always, oh my God, what's going to happen? But then you dive in and then, oh, we're all brothers. We're cool, know, and we're swimming around in this massive ocean of sound. And it's, as you said, pictures are happening, and shapes and things emerged and endings happened and, transitional majesty, it was like, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah. But, I mean, it was really composed. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I find out, always in these kinds of gigs is there's composition going on, and, I wanted to talk to you a bit about improvisation and composition or instant composition, if you will. And as you're playing, in a situation like that, are you just flowing, or are you actually, is your mind kind of going off and thinking about different things?
I mean, it's definitely, I guess, more the prior, definitely more of a flowing thing. I mean, because it's even in my nature as a person, I'm far more reactionary than I am sort of like, I'm really shitty at initiating anything, ideas. I have to be kind of like, it has to be a concept where it's understood. You are leading this thing. You are deciding this thing. And I could fit that role well, but it's not my comfort zone. I much prefer other people go first and let me assess what's happening and then go, okay, here's my rebuttal. Here's my response. Here's my reaction. Whatever. I tend to favor that. Like even in sports, like I was a far more better defensive player than perhaps an offensive player, like in basketball or stuff like that. Like I can goaltend pretty well. I can run and catch really well, but I don't put me as a pitcher. Don't put me as a quarterback. Don't put me in those situations because I'm gonna be left with indecision. Like
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So
I like that analogy. That's great.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I haven't played sports since I was a kid, but that's what it was. Like it's like it was kind of easy to go, okay, this guy kicked the ball. It's obviously going to go this way. It's going this fast. Boom. That seemed to be easier than being the guy kicking the ball. You know what I mean? Like, it's terrible soccer player.
Yeah.
Really terrible. Like, I kick and things go all, it's a mess. And so I've always been being with Zorn and that crew of people. They've taught me how to be more assertive in the improvising, so I can turn it on.
Wow.
But more often than not, when you're playing with great improvisers, whether it's like doing stuff with Medeski, doing stuff with you guys, doing stuff with Chenier and the Abraxas crew,
Yeah.
I can be in my comfort zone. I can just be a reactionary person because I can react instantaneously, and I hear an idea and I can understand how to build a frame around it or build something more three-dimensional, or go, okay, because of this idea, I hear how this is going to cycle this way and start to build the tesseract that may or may get picked up on or not, but it doesn't matter because it's allowing me to go, okay, it's something to work with.
Yeah.
I guess you could say I'm not a blank canvas guy. I haven't learned how to see the blank canvas as you're reacting already. There's nothing there. It started without you.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing. Like, it's like thinking about the Shapeshifters trio, and I hope we get to do some more of those gigs. Actually,
we should.
I think the chemistry is so strong in that band. But then moving on, a year later, we did the P.A.K.T band, P.A.K.T, and with Percy and Alex Skolnick. And when Leonardo from MoonJune suggested that, I was just like, dude. Because of course, I knew that you were in it, so I was so excited. I didn't know Alex, and of course, Percy is like legendary. So he's been my favorite bass player for my whole life. So to have an opportunity, and I've been trying over the years. I've been talking to him over decades here and there, and I got to play on a record where I overdubbed some guitar from a drummer here in Philly. So that was as close as I got to that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So when that actually happened, I was like, "Oh my God, I can't wait!" And then we're in the pandemic, we're all masked, and
which was weird.
It was so bizarre, and we were so far away from one another, and we're all masked, and we couldn't really smile at each other, or no kind of cueing except looking around, and stuff like that. But
just eyebrow cues. It was that part was tough. That definitely made it tough.
And somehow, however, that environment with one audience, which was Leo and the staff that was there, we got to just amazing places.
It did. And that was a pleasant surprise too, because especially, I've done stuff with Alex before in some of his other groups, and he has his no, I'm not the trio. I've never done the trio. That's always been, oh my God, why am I lunching on everybody's name now? And he just posted, he's got a new album that just came. He just posted on Instagram.
Oh man.
Oh, this is so bad. He's going to kill me when he hears this. But I haven't done the trio.
All right.
Yeah. But I did his Planetary Coalition. So I was subbing in that band, and so I did some stuff. Actually, that's not true. We did a trio gig. What am I talking about? We did the trio at the guitar camp with Steve Jenkins.
All right.
We did that. So yeah, we did some of the trio stuff.
So you guys had a history of playing together then?
A little bit. And he's an Imperial fan. So that was kind of cool. And he also was good friends with Lyris from the band Hung that I used to be in. And actually so was Cohen. So, there's always been a little bit of overlap. And actually him and Nathan both went to New School the same time I was there. So that was like the other thing is like, I'm getting into metal at New School from like Amir Zeev and Gary Bricard and a few other friends are like, give me all this metal stuff. And then you got like Alex Skolnick walking around and all the guys who know metal are like, dude, it's fucking Alex Skolnick from Testament, bro. And I'm just like, the guy from Testament? Like I was just so baffled. At this point, I didn't know that Lombardo worked with Zorn. So like, I'm just like fish out of water. Totally.
Yeah, I get it.
But I kind of always known him, and then obviously Percy with doing Brand X for those years, we got to be really close and playing together. So I was like excited about what this was going to be like. But I do know that for like Alex and Percy, like they're great improvisers, but they do get nervous in the sort of freer context where anything goes, where it's like, so I was curious to see like how this would go, but man, it was spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, and I couldn't believe it that because it's long, it's really long.
We did
And
two
people,
sets.
yeah, 2 full sets, and people like, I mean, that was some of the longest improvising I had done in a very long time too, which is, I mean, and that's for somebody who does it regularly, that I can only imagine for like Percy, and Alex. But man, it was fun. It
It,
was really fun.
I
Max.
I still remember like the atmospheric elements of this of these improvs where we were just creating these sound worlds, and I just remember you back there doing stuff, and it was like, wow, where are we? I felt like we were in like the Amazon or something at times, and
Yeah.
Percy with his angular bass lines would come in, and Alex was always surprising me because I didn't know him playing in other styles like that, and he just killed, and he does kill.
Really.
But I just loved again the chemistry of that band, and look forward to this mini tour coming up.
Yeah, that's going to be very cool. That is going to be very, very cool.
Yeah,
And it's I mean, hopefully, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are ready, you know what I mean? That they're ready to get back into things, so I'm hoping it'll be a good turnout for this stuff. Cause especially, with live improvised music, it can be like people flock to it or people are like, oh, it's going to be weird. But I think with the stuff that we do, it's a nice middle ground where it's like, you can't construe it as just being like jammy. And it's
right.
not just like straight up downtown, like a band falling upstairs. It's actually like really organic music, and it is more sensual in the other senses as it is oral and sonic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's like we've talked a little bit about all of this experiences that you've had and stuff, but I was really curious, and you had mentioned earlier that your parents were musicians, and I was wondering if we could go back to maybe the very first musical experience that you remember that kind of blew you out, that maybe at that time you were like, wow, what's this? Or maybe another time where, wow, I want to do this, or wow, drums got me. What was it? What brought you in?
Well, I mean, it definitely would have been childhood. I forget if I would be 3, like somewhere between 3 and 5 years old, somewhere in that range. Cause my dad was a drummer and my mom is a singer, but she plays piano as well, but she's predominantly a singer. And my grandfather had he was part of like the Fania movement back in the 60s and 70s, what have you. So he had a group that toured. And my dad eventually ended up becoming the drummer in the band. And my mom was one of the vocalists. She's one of the backup vocalists. So the earliest music experiences I had were either from the church that he started in Miami, which is the reason why the whole family moved down there in the first place, was, the music happening then. Cause it was basically his band was became the church band for the musicians who were willing to like leave New York and follow him down to Miami with this church. Whereas, some of the musicians lived in New York and they're more session guys, so they stayed. But predominantly a lot of the family went all with grandpa down to Miami for the church. So there was that, but there was also the there was a tour that they couldn't find a babysitter for. And I forget if this was in Colombia or if this was in Curacao, but it was somewhere, somewhere down there. Because I want to say it was probably the Columbia concert, because I think I got to be on stage and they gave me like a cha-cha, like a really small cowbell to like play along in the sound checks just to calm me down, because I was like running all over the place. It was very hyper child. So I mean, watching my dad play, that was, and as a kid, like I could, when I heard music, it would stay with me. Like I always knew that, like with any songs that I heard, like I never forgot them. They would just kind of play over and over and over again in my head. And I would just listen to them that way. But, I got into music through that. And, I think watching my dad play was a really big impact on probably the instrument that I was going to gravitate towards, cause I play guitar and I play bass, but in the way that somebody who like needs to write music plays it, not as a professional, not even as like, I wouldn't join a rock band and be the guitar player in that rock band, because I'm just doing that rock band a massive disservice. You know what I mean? Like I'm not good enough to be in a band, but I know how it works. You know what I mean? Like, it's more like that. So, I never really gravitated towards other instruments in terms of like pursuing the way I did drums. And I think having a physical, tangible example of it, obviously it kind of pushed me in that direction. And I was lucky where my dad never forced it. He never forced music on me because for him, he grew up in Brooklyn, grew up pretty poor, big family, it's, like 3-bedroom, like 9-10 people in the 3-bedroom, like kind of thing, so it was, for him, music was an escape. Music was a joy. Music was this thing that like got him out of regular life. And it was something deep for him. And he was kind of, as far as we know, he was one of the first musicians on my dad's side of the family. We don't really know too many other musicians. He was kind of the first. And, he always wanted to play drums. And then eventually, I think by the time he was in high school, he got his first kit, something like that. I got to ask my aunt just to be sure, but I'm pretty sure it was sometime in mid high schools when he finally got his first drum set. And then from that short time period to his early 20s and after college, he's already doing gigs and touring and doing session work and stuff like that. So, for him, it's like, even though he made it a career for a short while, he never wanted it to be something like mandatory. He really didn't like what he saw a lot of other parents doing with their kids, which is like they're 3 years old or 4 years old. He didn't know what Suzuki was. He just was like, they got these kids that are fucking playing violin with stickers on it. And it's, like, these kids aren't happy. They're not happy. None of these kids are happy. They don't want to do this. It's just their parents are making them. Yeah. And these kids are going to grow up to resent music, and they're going to resent musicians. And, at the time, my mom was kind of egging him on to be like, no, he's clearly got talent for drums. You need to teach him some drums. And so they asked me, do you want to study drums? I was like, nope. And so I did it until I was 12. And then once I said, you know what, I think I want to study drums, then it was mom's turn, which was that was the best time for it to be mom's turn. Cause she was, she kind of instilled in me the need to practice. Yeah. Like, to a point where it's like, I was able to develop in a way where it's like, no, I can spend 4, 5, 6, 7 hours with like maybe a couple of breaks to just, drink some water, go to the bathroom, things like that, but just straight up focus for a long period of time. Cause she was like a really good drill sergeant in that regard. Wow. And I learned to love the shed from it, cause especially then, like when I started studying, she wanted me to study classical. So I was, learning, I had like a really old, we're talking like 20s. It's like a full 5-octave, but no extension, just a standard 5-octave marimba that kind of was almost more of a xylophone than it was marimba. Right. Like, I'm pretty sure because some of the bars didn't make sense in the row. You know what I mean? Like some of these bars are like, oh, clearly this is a marimba bar, but this is just from a xylophone set. Like, it's not even the scale doesn't it, whatever. But I spent a lot of time on that instrument, just shedding, and I played a lot of timpani growing up. So I was studying drums and mallet percussion and orchestral percussion. So I needed all that time to kind of shed. And then my stepfather had gotten me a guitar in junior high, and that's where I started using that to sort of like write songs. Because growing up, I mean, I even before studying music at 12, I liked more progressive and interesting things. Like, I really loved, and that, it's a lot of the music my dad loved. So, things like where you're looking at, a lot of the classic rock from the 50s and 60s, as well as like the blues and stuff that was happening in the States. But he also was super into the Canterbury thing. He was super into pretty much every Rush album that he got to hear. He was, so all that stuff. And even though he didn't check out a lot of classical music, he did like Stravinsky. Yeah. I think because Stravinsky was like the closest thing to like prog for him. You know what I mean? It's like, here's some Mahavishnu, here's some Genesis. You know what I mean? Like, he can make those connections. And so he's like, oh yeah, this stuff's pretty cool. Whereas like other classical stuff, he's like, he liked it, he enjoyed it, but because there's no drumming, it didn't quite move him the way other styles of music would. And so I think, I mean, that's where the family kind of experience thing was really kind of informative in a lot of ways. Cause at home, I'm listening to all this rock and progressive rock and reggae and blues and fusion. And the fusion stuff is what I gravitated towards. That's why I'm like, why are we talking about this shit? I forgot. But yeah, it was like stuff like Mahavishnu Orchestra, Tony
Yeah.
Williams' Lifetime, Holdsworth. Like Holdsworth is still one of my all-time favorite musicians, still one of my all-time favorite, even just like maybe not the way he produces records. I've had arguments with many fans and colleagues about how he produces records, but compositionally,
Yeah.
some of my favorite writing.
Oh,
It's some of my favorite stuff. Like where it's like when you even hear other people play the arrangement, not his interpretations, not them trying to emulate him, but when they just play the arrangement, on your own instrument, the music holds up. In fact, I mean, you play that shit on a 9-footer. I mean, come on, tell me that doesn't hold its weight with Debussy. That dude, I mean, and it's my opinion, but you're not going to change my opinion.
Have you heard Gary Husband's
yeah
record? And I think Markus just remastered that for him, so it just came out. But hearing that again, I got it a long time ago, and just hearing some of those pieces, it's just like, wow, it's exactly as you said. Yeah.
And especially somebody like him who has such a deep relationship in the real way with Holdsworth, like in a very, like, not just like we've toured together, we've been bros, but like they've lived a life together. They've lived a life. And it's so evident in how he treats the material, how he respects the material. And it's touching, you know. It's like, okay, yeah, we live in a world with guys like Steven Gosling and, you know, Gonzalo Rubalcaba and all that, and Keith Jarrett, right? He's still around. We live in that world, but it's like, sometimes there's just like, there's the human thing, which just supersedes everything else. And Gary's in tune with that, you know. And I mean, I don't want to gush, because he's you know, he's a guy that I grew up listening to among tons of dudes. But for me, it's like Gary was, I mean, like even just the stuff outside of IOU, but IOU, it's like that energy has always been like something that stuck with me. And I think like I, you know, even when I just play drums, you know, like that's a definite influence, you know what I mean? Just, and especially being in a place like New York and playing places like 55 Bar, that kind of sound and energy is like fits right at home, you know? And so it was like, and I mean, a lot of the guys that play at 55 are definitely inspired by Gary. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's ever played that room and says, "Oh, Gary Husband, whatever." Like anyone who does is just a schmuck.
Yeah,
they don't know shit. Like you're, and I don't think that person exists. To be, I mean, I know that's like a really bold statement to make, but I can't imagine any drummer that's played there, not like having at least a handful of his records.
Yeah,
like even the Stephen Topping stuff. Like I love all that stuff with the Steve Topping trio.
I haven't heard that stuff.
Oh man, dude, it's cool. It's cool. It's very cool. Steve Topping is a very cool fucking guitar player.
Wow.
Because he's like another Strat guy, but he's like jazz, fusion, blues, but with like a nice avant tinge. You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't recognize it then as a youngster, because I still hadn't heard Ornette or, you know, any of the, you know, Chicago Art Ensemble. I haven't checked that shit out yet. But as a kid, I was like, this is like weird blues. This is like weird fusion, but it's awesome. And it's Gary Husband. He's fucking shredding on it.
Wow.
You know? So I was super into those records.
Who's some other drummers that you love?
Ooh.
I mean, I know there's hundreds, but maybe some of your top 5, maybe.
Oh, fuck. Man, it's hard. I mean, I can maybe give eras of drummers. You know what I mean?
Eras are good
because it's hard. I can't do the quantitative thing. Is very hard. I've never understood it. But you know, like the pre-taking lessons and studying music era, like definitely guys like Lenny White were massive for me. Gary was massive for me. Bill Bruford was huge. Like those early Yes records, and then his solo stuff, and just anything he did. Like even like I mean, Earthworks. When I first heard it, I was like, "Whoa, this is fucking weird," but I kind of like it. But the Crimson stuff, like all the stuff he did, I always enjoyed his sound, his approach. When I was like a kid reading magazines or like hearing my dad's friends and musicians talk about like, "Oh, he never plays the same beat; it's always random." And every person now that I'm now that I'm almost 40, I realized, oh, these people don't know what phrases are.
Yeah.
Never mind. All that shit was nonsense. This is just a bunch of people with dumb opinions. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I would listen to it, be like, what do you mean? He's playing it. The groove's in 7. He's playing in 7. What's the problem? What? Because he's not doing it like Charlie Watts. Like, it's not the Rolling Stones. Like, I'm sorry, it's his band. He can do what the fuck he wants. He's not trying to like get on MTV. He's making music. He's expressing. I mean, would you go to Grupo de Matanzas and be like, hey, the quinto player is playing a bunch of random shit. Maybe he should lock in with the band. It's like, no, you're not going to do that. You would never do that. So but anyway, that's I'm just venting about dumb music stuff.
Oh yeah.
But so those, like, definitely those guys.
Yeah.
Neil Peart was really big when I was a kid. Like, Rush was my first big rock concert.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got to see them twice on 2 different tours. And one time they had Sonic Youth open, which was like my brother was not into it. My stepbrother was did not like that. But I was like, wow, this guitar player is crazy.
Holy
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen a guitar player do that. This is nuts. And then the next time we saw them, it was Primus opening.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of sense. I think I saw that tour.
Yeah, I forget. It was like I want to say it was one of the 90s tours, like maybe Counterparts or the Roll the Bones, one of those eras. Yeah. And, and that time too, my dad would let me stay up late with him, and he'd have like all these VHSs of like the Seconds Out tour, like the Fly By Night stuff, like all those like Fly By Night concerts. Like, I got to watch a lot of those with him. He actually knew who Zorn was before I did, because he saw that SNL where it was like Zorn trying to conduct like Hiram Bullock and Omar Hakim, who was, I mean, also like Omar Hakim and Weather Report was real. Like, the Weather Report drummers in general were really big for me as a kid. Oh, like, so Omar was huge for me. Chester. Narada, like as in Narada also as band leader, songwriter. Tony, like, I know Tony wasn't doing Weather Report, but just that era of drummers was really big influence for me. Huge influence.
Yeah, Tony, what a story there. That's a whole chapter in itself, or a whole book in itself, maybe.
It really is. Yeah. So, but then I would say probably then getting into like high school age, like heavy classical percussion age, like that's where I really thought I was going to do. I didn't think I was going to do a career in drums at that point. I mean, I was in a school with an old dear friend of mine, this guy, Obed Calver, and I'm like, this is the guy in the top jazz band and the top big band in the school. And if guys around the country sound like this guy playing jazz, I have no fucking chance. You know what I mean? It's like, I have no future playing jazz. So I'm just going to focus on this classical thing, because at least it pays well. I mean, that was where I was at. But anyway, so I definitely was like, I was still checking out a lot of drummers still, but I was like super like, oh my God, I got to work on my swing shit. This is, like, it was fun. And it was good because we helped each other, let's say. Like, he gave me a lot of good pointers and free lessons and stuff. So that was cool. But in that time frame, like talking like mid-late 90s, I was really getting into guys like Ari Honig, Jorge Rossi, Keith Carlock, Zach Danziger, Gary Novak. Like, I started Frank Katz. Like checking out like Excommunication. Like, the first time I heard Excommunication, I was like I'll never forget. I listened to, and this was on a cassette tape, on one of those Maxwell like 90-minute dub cassette tapes. I memorized exactly how long to rewind the tape from the very end of Liquid Time to get right back to the snare hit. Like, and that was like, because I just kept doing it over and over again. I just loved the song so much, and I was like, this is so different than any Brand X. Oh, fucking hell. Goddamn Phil.
Oh yeah.
Like, all those, Percy was my dad's favorite bass player of all time. Like, more than, I mean, he loved Jocko, he loved Stanley, he loved all the great bass players. He loved Rocco Prestillo was probably number 2 for him. Would be Rocco. But Percy was head and shoulders above everybody else. That was his bucket list musician.
Yeah.
And it's I just had a really not fun memory.
Oh,
No, it's one of those things that was a valuable life lesson where the night before my dad passed, he called because he was like, "Hey, like I know it's late, but you gotta tell me what it was like hanging with Percy, man. Love you." And then the next morning I get the call.
oh,
My dad's one of those guys, like I don't like being on the phone. I don't, especially cell phones. I don't like having cell phones near my head. I don't enjoy that at all. So I don't really like talking on the phone. There's very few people that I'm willing to talk to. Like my dad is one of them. Obviously my mom, but we always have had great conversations on the phone. And then like my mentors, like guys like Lonnie, guys like Zorn, guys like Andy Milne, have
yeah,
always people that I like. I'll give them 2, 3, 4 hours on the phone. Trace Ruins. I mean, like we are the worst, most aloof people on planet Earth. So we always play phone tag with each other for months. But then when we talk on the phone, it's like a 6-hour conversation.
yeah.
So, but my dad was always the guy that I picked up the phone for, no matter what. And this was like one time where I was like, I got home, I was tired, I'd been drinking, I was still drinking. I was like, I'll fucking call him tomorrow. Stupid. And it's, and that's something that I carry with me. And I spent plenty of years beating myself up for it. But then it's also like, dude, life is real. Time moves forward in all directions. Get with the program.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so like, I never got to tell him what it was like meeting Percy, but then fast forward like later in that decade, now Percy and I are friends and we talk on the phone regularly, like every couple weeks or so. And we write music together and we tour together and we did the Brand X reunion thing together. And I mean, like just to kind of keep that there, but it's something I would have never imagined.
That was, by the way, that was really a great band.
Yeah. Growing up, my dad being a huge Percy fan, he had all the Brand X stuff, all of it, all the bootlegs, all the live shit, all the Japanese stuff. So I got to hear all the Marscape album, like all that stuff. I grew up on all that. Like I had it memorized before I was playing drums. Like I used to know all of Phil's breaks.
Wow.
And that's why I was like, when I did the gig and even the auditions, like I'm going to play the grooves. I'm going to play how I play, but I'm not going to go note for note. I can't, because that's going to be disingenuous. It doesn't matter that I'm like a lifelong fan.
Yeah.
I got to just play how I play, but I know the parts and I know the songs. And even then, like by that point too, they were changing some of the arrangements from how they were on the album originally. So, there was room to actually reinterpret things. And then, then it happened. So then here we are. And it's like, it went from Percy and I just kind of getting along and to like, we got really close. We spent a lot of time together on tour and just hanging out. And usually we would share hotel rooms together and, just kind of shoot the shit until he passed out.
He's a great dude, man. And I don't know him that well yet, but just the few small, short conversations we've had, just like always beautiful dude,
Yeah. And brilliant in a way that a lot of people, might not readily realize, because he's so kind of demure and calm and soft spoken.
Yeah,
they don't realize often, even people who know him, I don't think realize how sophisticated his mind is. Even he doesn't, I think, realize it, because I've had to edit papers for him and like stuff that he's written for like a few non-music related things, and the level of sophistication in what he's detailing, it's mind-blowing. And what was hilarious is the stuff that he wanted me to edit, I didn't need to edit that stuff. It was graphs, which I'm like, look, dude, that's all you. That's all radio spectrometry. That's above my pay grade. You just asked me to make sure that these sentences make sense. The sentences are impeccable. You just got to fix this graph because the math is clearly wrong from what you said. And that was it, but he's constantly thinking of really, really high-minded things, really advanced concepts. It's like schematics on like engineering stuff, all kinds of things. I mean, there's stuff in his apartment that he's built by hand, and you're just like, it looks like some pro shit you would have bought in the, in some sort of retail place. And it's crazy. Like the dude is super smart.
Oh yeah.
Like definitely in another life was a total egghead. in another life, not like some badass bass player with a weird ass technique. No, in another life, he's a scientist. He's got a lab coat.
But he's here, so he's doing both.
Yeah, exactly.
No one told me I couldn't do both things or all the things. So
exactly. Yeah. No, he's a prolific cat, and it's fucking cool as hell to just be friends with them.
Yeah,
I mean, just to hang with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I look forward to the few days that we'll have when we tour to get to know everybody better, and it's
indeed
gonna be a good time.
Indeed.
We've been talking for a while. I have one other question for you.
Sure.
And this would be more on the lines of, we're talking about the early days, but what advice would you give to some of the listeners checking this out in terms of the way forward, things to pay attention to coming up, that kind of thing?
You mean like projects that are coming up, or
no, like,
or you mean like life?
Life, students of music, players, musicians, drummers.
The human thing.
Yeah, like dealing with that. And, we go through so much in our brains that, the you suck syndrome.
Oh,
what keeps you going? That's what we're trying to do. Keep the sparks alive, because, we kept going for whatever reason, and look where you are now,
Indeed.
So, kind of encouragement, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Definitely. That makes sense. The human thing, just understanding, and I say human because that's how somebody some time ago designated this species. They called us Homo sapien. They called us human being. That's their way of codifying this experience. But just remembering that we are entities in this thing, and embracing that, like not shying away from that. Not being so concrete about these things. We're not concrete. We are mellifluous by nature, by design. So just be malleable, be willing to change, be willing to grow, be willing to be broken, be willing to be bent and twisted, and don't stop looking in. Like, I mean, part of the other thing I spent this year was just realizing, like, in the broader macro, just in the micro of my life, but the macro of it, realizing I still got a lot of homework to do. There's things that I gotta suss this shit out. There's past pains, past hurts, things I forgot, things that I'm only now remembering, things that I've done, things that I haven't done, and just going like, okay, these are things. These happened. Where do we build from here? Where do we go from here? And just keep doing the homework, because the beauty of the homework and the work is that it never ends. And it's there, and there is no perfection. It's just, how far did you get to in this lifetime? How far did you reach? Who did you pull along with you? Who saw your progress or your failures and were inspired to try better, try harder, try something different? Just keep reaching outward. Don't shy away from things. Embrace new things. Embrace things you don't really, especially now, now that we live in a situation where, money, aka power, aka the shadow self of ego, dominates the will of the people at the top, and have done so for far, far, far longer than any of us have ever realized. It's now more indicative that every individual person finds their way to just spark, finds their way to just flash a pinpoint of light. And if you could just get enough of these fucking things going, just start there. And you can only really start there. It's not about being a boss. It's not about like fucking, like, love yourself is great, but love yourself means you do the work. Love yourself means you embrace the whole shit, the shit and the beauty. Gotta all of it, and become whole and figure out what's got to get left in this pile and what's got to get put over here and what has to be taken into the future. But we can only do that with the homework. I think, so just as that relates to music, it's the same. Just
absolutely
don't stop learning. Don't stop looking for new things. Maybe, especially, and I say this, and maybe for a lot of people, it's going to be incredibly hypocritical what I'm going to say, because I am a incredibly critical, glass half empty person by nature. But be less dogmatic in your criticism. Be less critical. It's boring. It's the only thing I've learned is, like, the years of being critical. It's like, it can be used poorly.
I love that. Yeah.
It's a very easy avenue for the ego to
Critical
manifest itself.
Critical of yourself and critical of others.
Yes. I mean, it's very, and again, it's like if the ego can't win by making you feel you're the greatest, it will win by making you feel you're the worst. And I've seen far too many friends, loved ones who've fallen down this trap, who they stop truly loving themselves because they cannot stand the critique of themselves. And that's just the ego dominating.
Yeah.
It's all about the self still. And it's not about how your existence coexists with all the things that exist. I mean, it's no mystery that it's not random that galactic clusters, right? And the way the galaxies form in them look very much like what's happening in the fucking human brain in synopsis. The shit isn't random. It's not hippy dippy, whatever the fuck.
Nature.
This is science and nature. And all these things are hippies, science, nature. We're all looking at existence and just seeing it from our own paradigms.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to figure this fucker out. And the sooner we just kind of put these things together and stop judging it and stop critiquing it internally and externally, the sooner we can get to some real answers, get to some real fun, get to some real shit.
Dude, well said. That's brilliant. And I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on and actually listening to all this. You know, this is just kind of the shit that I say to Julie all the time and just drive her crazy.
Oh, I love it. And we need to talk more and hang more and play more at some point too, you know. So I look forward to all that.
Likewise, man. Hopefully the summer is a start to getting back to doing the human thing.
Exactly. That sounds great. Well, anyway, my sincere thanks. As an honor to have you and to have this really amazing chat and kind of get a feel for where you've been and what's been happening. And it's been an amazing ride so far, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Well, like I said, this was very, very cool. And I'm super flattered that you have me on here, man. It's very cool.
A pleasure. And I will see you soon.
Yeah, man. See you shortly.
Yeah. Have a great week. Thanks,
man. You too.
Bye.
Later.
And we're signing off. Thanks for joining us. Until next time. Bye-bye.